Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into our time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Crime drama The Adventures of Philip Marlowe, starring Gerald Mohr, from January 15th, 1949, in the case of the Black Halo.
Somewhere in the cold, persistent rain that made the city itself seem a thing of evil, a girl had disappeared, and it was my job to find her. But before I did, I found death and a devil.
From the pen of Raymond Chandler, outstanding author of crime fiction, comes his most famous character as CBS presents The Adventures of Philip Marlowe. And now, with Gerald Mohr starred as Philip Marlowe, we bring you tonight's exciting story, The Black Halo.
For 3 days, an ugly storm had lashed at the west coast from northern Oregon to the tip of Lower California. And although it was only noon when I drove up to the sprawling red brick house just south of Santa Barbara to meet a new client of mine, the black that was in the sky and the driving rain that was everywhere left the day bleak and wet and cold. Left it the kind of day that made you feel that logs blazing in a fireplace and a warm, dry robe were the only things that could matter to anyone. But when I got inside the house, Felix Drum, 350 uncomfortable pounds of executive in a wheelchair, who made his living importing perfumes, was very worried. And not about the weather outside.
Marlowe, Julia Perry is gone. I want you to find her and bring her back. And the sooner you do that, the better.
And the more I know, Mr. Drum, the easier it'll be. Exactly who is Julia Perry?
My assistant. Very capable girl, who in the past 6 months has practically taken over my entire business. She handles most of the work from her cottage here on the grounds where she lives.
Mm-hmm.
She also has some little cubbyhole in Los Angeles where she keeps her files and some sample stock.
Do you have the address of that cubbyhole?
If I knew the answer to everything, I wouldn't have hired you. And anyway, it isn't important. Hand me that little bottle.
This
there,
one?
please. Yes.
Oh, here.
Thank you.
When did you last see Julia, Mr. Drum?
3 days ago. It was 3 days ago, when she left on one of her regular weekly trips down to Los Angeles to bid on perfumes. Usually she stayed away overnight, but the Beechwood Plaza Hotel most of the time, and she was back here by noon the next day.
I suppose you've already checked the Beechwood Plaza, huh?
Yes, of course. My man Ruby, the one who showed you in, has called the place 12 times. But they only know that Julia registered there 3 days ago and hasn't been seen since.
Well, what about the girl herself, Mr. Drum? I mean her background, friends, family, that sort of thing.
As far as I know, Marlowe, Julia has no friends, no family either. She's just a sweet but smart little girl from someplace in Kansas.
Mm-hmm. No beaux, not even nice ones, huh?
I don't think she had the time. You see, when Julia first came to work for me, she wanted to get ahead, and I gave her the chance. She made good.
Mm-hmm.
Today, she's as much my right arm as Ruby is my leg.
Mr. Drum, did you notice anything unusual about Julia's behavior lately?
Yes, and that's the reason I'm worried. About 2 weeks ago, I saw changes in the girl, Marlowe. She seemed less spry, more preoccupied.
Oh?
Yes. I figured it was overwork myself, since the end of the year always means detailed annual reports, so I made no comment at the time.
I see. Tell me, Mr. Drum, what does she look like?
Well, I have no pictures, but she's a blonde of medium height and was wearing a plaid raincoat and little circle of a hat when she left.
Uh-huh.
Altogether, she's sweet and simple, if that's what you mean.
Yeah. Do you mind if I stop into the cottage on my way out?
Marlowe, you turn the place inside out if it'll help any. Only since I'm certain that Julia's in some kind of bad trouble, you be quick and find her.
Julia Perry's cottage was strictly the 50-50 arrangement the Drum had mentioned, with one room office and the other living quarters. In the office, I found everything in its proper place, so I moved to the other room. The moment I stepped over the threshold, the white fluff that trimmed the quilted bedspread and the splash of color in the drapes said that Julia Perry had to be something soft and warm. The half a dozen quietly tailored suits that were lined up in the closet like a squad of soldiers facing right told me that she was also simple and neat. I ran through the pockets of her clothes and all the drawers and closets in the room, trying to find something that would give me a lead that I was sure I had to have. After 20 minutes, I'd found only a leather cigarette case, a package of peppermint lifesavers, and a maroon and gold monogram book of matches, the cover of which was half torn off so that I could only be certain that the middle initial was a V and that an E or an F were on either end. But since the name and address of an L.A. novelty company was on the inside, I bought the matches as a starting point, dropped them into my pocket, and headed for the door. When I opened it, I was surprised to find Ruby, Drum's right-hand man, purple scar and all, standing in the rain, and staring at me like my ears were spinning.
You seem to be a very thorough man, Mr. Private Detective.
And you seem to be a very nosy one. What do you want?
To help Julia, nothing else. Here's a postcard that came for her this morning. It was mailed in L.A. yesterday.
Yeah? Dear Julia, tried to reach you at Santa Barbara 1181 both yesterday and today, but got no answer. I'm leaving town tomorrow. There's one little girl who fled life in Haven, Kansas to another. I would have enjoyed seeing you again. For a bit before I moved on to who knows where. Anne. Santa Barbara 1181. That the number here?
Yeah. It's Julia's private business phone. Well, what do you think? The postcard any help?
Possibly. Tell me, Ruby, why didn't you show this to Mr. Drum?
I forgot about it until just now.
You're a liar.
Well, it's on account of the postcard was delivered here to the cottage.
Which is no man's land for you?
Yeah, sort of. Mr. Drum doesn't like people who work for him mixing socially with each other.
Well, maybe a sweet kid like Julia hasn't got any use for the passes you've been making at her. Huh?
Hold it. I like Julia, and even if she don't go for me, anything I can do to help her, I still do, understand?
Yeah, I understand. I'm not so sure I believe. Goodbye, Ruby. It was pushing 5 o'clock and still raining by the time I got back to L.A. and over to the novelty company. Once there, I presented the torn book of matches that I'd found in Julia's cottage to a bald man with horizontal question marks for eyebrows, and who, at the crinkle of a $5 bill, tore himself away from his racing form long enough to check the files for a set of maroon and gold initials that had a V in the middle. And it was 6 o'clock before I had the answer, which was EVE. And they weren't initials, but the front name of Mrs. Eve Bentley, who lived in a villa at the swank Sunset Terrace Apartments. And according to the gentleman who said he knew his oats, was a very classy filly. An hour later, I was at Mrs. Bentley's front door, and while I made with the chimes and waited, I wondered just how much a guy who loves the ponies could know about women. But when the door opened, I had my answer.
Yes? What is it?
Mrs. Eve Bentley wasn't beautiful, but she was everything else, including a shimmering yard of gold hair piled high on her head and held in place by a knot of pearls that no Boy Scout ever tied. Her face was wide blue eyes and open red lips on a backdrop of soft, fair skin. She wore a black silk jersey dress that must have been sprayed on. She smiled when I said my name was Philip Marlowe and that I wanted to talk.
Talk about what, Mr. Marlowe?
Julia Perry, ever hear of her?
No, I haven't.
So I'll try again. What do you know about Ann somebody from Haven, Kansas?
Absolutely nothing.
This torn book of matches says otherwise. I found them in Julia Perry's cottage. Julia Perry's missing. I'm a private detective who was hired to find her, and the matches turned out to be yours. Now, may I come in?
Why, yes.
Thanks. Now, Mrs. Bentley, maybe we ought to start all over.
No, wait just a minute, Mr. Marlowe. I may be able to help you. Did this Julia Perry deal in perfumes?
That's right. Now, how did you know that?
Because I just remembered something. And now I'm sure I can explain why my matches showed up where they did.
Just a minute. You know, whenever I'm talking to a beautiful woman, somebody's always creeping around in the kitchen. Who is it this time?
Oh, really, Mr. Marlowe? There's a storm outside, and there are windows and trees. You put those three things together, that noise could have been a branch scratching on a glass pane.
Or somebody with squeaky shoes and a lot of curiosity. Somebody like Mr. Bentley, for instance. Huh?
Oh, I doubt that, Mr. Marlowe. You see, Mr. Bentley's been dead now for 3 long years.
Oh, yes. Well, you were saying something about the matches.
Oh, yes. This Julia Perry must somehow or other gotten hold of him through my fiancé, Marvin Whitaker.
How does that figure?
Like 2 and 2. Marvin is in the perfume business. Ditto Julia. Also, I think he mentioned her name once. Said she was very clever for a girl who looked like somebody's kid sister.
That fits all right. Where will I find said fiancé?
At his favorite bar and grill. But won't you have a drink first, Mr. Marlowe?
No, thanks, Eve. They're There isn't time. Now the bar and grill.
The Blue Boar.
Blue which?
Boar, Mr. Marlowe.
Yeah.
It's a very English spot over on Wilshire, opposite Arthur Murray's studio. But before you dash, do you at least have a match?
Yeah. Whole book of them, honey. Torn cover and all. And I want you to keep them. After all, they brought us together, didn't they? When I got outside, I postponed my run between the raindrops over to Wilshire Boulevard long enough to take a look behind the villa. And there, in a newly planted strip of clover lawn below Mrs. Bentley's kitchen window, I found something which was no surprise. 2 clear prints of a man's shoe. But from there on out, I got nothing more than a lot of rain down the back of my neck. So 10 minutes later, I dripped into my car and headed for the Blue Boar and Eve Bentley's gentleman friend. I located Marvin Whitaker, a handsome, hale fellow well met, in a white turtleneck sweater and riding breeches. Behind a hot rum toddy in a corner booth, there was pictures of steeplechase mounts against newly antique mahogany. And when I told him that I was looking for Julia Perry, he flashed a lot of glistening teeth at me, insisted that I join him in a warming glass of spirits, and started to talk, gesturing all the time with a riding crop.
Why, yes, old man, I know Julia Perry. In fact, almost did some business with her today.
You mean you were supposed to meet Julia someplace?
That's right. At 1881 Selma Avenue, to be precise. But she called me this morning and postponed the whole transaction. Indefinitely.
Could you stop projecting long enough to tell me why?
She didn't say. Of course, it's of no bother to me on a day like this. No sane man should be any farther away from a toddy than we are right now. So drink up, old boy. It'll do you a world of good.
Yeah, I bet it will. Look, Mr. Whitaker, one more question. Did Julia ever speak of a girlfriend named Anne? Someone she knew years ago in Kansas?
No, I don't believe she did, Marlowe. Matter of fact, Julia never talks of anything but perfumes. Now drink your drink, fellow, before it's chilled through.
Thanks, but no thanks, old bean. I do have to run, really. It was a 20-minute drive to the address on Selma, and the rain had stopped by the time I got there. The place was one of those once-upon-a-time rooming houses that had been partitioned off into a couple of dozen 2x4 cubby holes, just big enough for the very small businessman to fill his fountain pen in. When I got to the door and asked the scrub woman, who was a lot of wild red hair around 2 pop eyes, for Julia Perry, I knew I was moving in the right direction, because the lady standing in front of me was anything but calm. And more important, she had just heard a pistol shot from the back of the house.
Yes, that's right. A pistol shot not over 2 minutes ago. I'm sure that Perry girl had something to do with it. Because when I come from inside, I saw her rush out down these steps.
Did she say anything?
I don't know. She was gone out of sight before I could open my mouth. But I know it was her on account of that plaid coat and little hat she wears.
Yeah. Now, which room is hers? Come on.
Well, that one there with the light showing under the door. But it's locked. You won't be able to get in. I just tried.
Well, we'll try again for luck. It's not the best lumber. Believe me.
This is terrible. Nothing like this has ever happened to me before. It's a man.
Yeah. A dead one at that, Granny.
You know who it is?
Uh-huh. Well, the mud and clover grass on the bottom of his shoes, I'd tag him as a guy who was looking in a lady's kitchen window about an hour ago. But from that purple scar on his chin, I can do even better than that. The name, Granny, is Ruby, a guy I thought was still in Santa Barbara.
In just a moment, we will return to the second act of The Adventures of Philip Marlowe. But first...
January 15th, 1949, The Adventures of Philip Marlowe on Classic Radio Theater. Classic Radio Theater family, you know our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. He didn't stop by just creating the best pillow. He created the best bed sheets ever. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me, because, you know, I'm working like 67 hours a day. Now, Mike's offering the best deal on his Giza Dreams bed sheets ever. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. You'll never want to sleep on anything else once you slept on a set of Giza Dream sheets. A special offer for you right now. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. Call 1-800-928-4715. Use the promo code Wyatt. Or go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Wyatt. It's good on anything on the website. That number again, 1-800-928-4715. Use my promo code Wyatt. Thank you for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater. Now more of the Adventures of Philip Marlowe from January 15th, 1949.
And now, with our star, Gerald Mohr, we return to the second act of Philip Marlowe and tonight's story, The Black Halo.
Ruby's body sprawled on the floor, and the girl in the plaid raincoat running away from it meant one thing. Julia Perry's trouble was important, like life, but more like death. A half sneer was congealed on Ruby's face, and his eyes, turned waxy, still held a look of mild surprise. I wasted some breath telling the scrub woman not to touch anything, and then I put in a call to my overweight client in Santa Barbara. He was glad to hear from me, at first.
Marlowe. Well, now, I didn't expect a call from you this soon. You sure work fast, don't you, lad? Have you found her? Have you located Julia?
Not quite. She's about 5 minutes ahead of me. Incidentally, Mr. Drum, she works fast, too.
What do you mean by that?
Let me ask the questions, huh? Number one, what was your leg man Ruby doing in L.A. tonight?
Ruby?
Yeah.
Why, I sent him in to pick up some medicine for me. Why?
Come on, Drum, you can talk straighter than that, and you better. I just found Ruby dead.
Dead? Ruby's dead? What happened to him, Marlowe?
He was shot. So forget the gags and tell me why he was snooping around.
All right. I didn't trust you.
No.
It's my policy to trust nobody until he proves himself. I sent Ruby in to follow you and check on your progress.
That was brilliant. You only made 3 mistakes. First, I don't need to be checked on. Second, you got your man killed. And third, you forced Julia's hand. Because it was Miss Perry herself who pulled the trigger on Ruby.
Julia? Marlowe, I don't believe that.
Which proves nothing, Mr. Drum, but skip it. Tell me, do you know a man named Marvin Whitaker?
Whitaker?
Yeah.
No, should I?
Well, he says he's in the perfume business.
Well, I know everybody on the coast who bought more than 2 bottles of perfume at one time in the last 40 years, and I don't recall that name. I think the man must be a liar.
So do I. Thanks for the help. And, Drum, if you've got any more expendable flunkies around, keep them out of my hair. I'll call you when I've got something. I called homicide next and told Detective Lieutenant Ibarra where to find the body and who was responsible for it being in that dead condition. When the question of why came up, I admitted I was still shooting blanks. I told him about the razzle-dazzle Whitaker had handed me and named the Blue Boar on Wilshire as my next stop. Ibarra said he'd call me there, and when I got to the entrance of the place, I saw Whitaker, draped in a trench coat that involved enough cloth to rig a 4-masted schooner, standing in the anteroom, impatiently smacking his leg with that riding crop. He looked positively dashing. Question was, which way?
Hiya there, Marlowe. Hey, old boy, you look upset. Anything wrong?
I may be upset, Whitaker, but you're the one that's going to spill. First, are you leaving or coming back?
I'm just leaving.
Been here all the time since I talked to you?
That's right. You see, my coat is perfectly dry.
Stopped raining half an hour ago.
well, you see, if I'd been outside, I would have known that. But why this 3rd degree, Marlowe? What's up?
It's a long story. Maybe we better sit down and talk it all over from the beginning.
Oh, I'm afraid I can't. Not just now. I've got a date.
She'll keep.
Not this one. It's something rather special.
Special, huh? Like Eve Bentley?
Now, look here, old boy. You're prying into my personal affairs.
Whitaker, I'll rip the lid clear off your personal affairs if necessary to get a clean answer out of you. Now, what do you really know about Julia Perry?
I told you once. Are you implying that I'm a liar?
At least that. For instance, who puts out a mirror? Come on, Whitaker. It's a well-known fragrance.
Why, I don't recall offhand.
That's strange, because any woman knows Amir's a Dana perfume.
Just what are you trying to prove by all this?
That as a perfume dealer, you stink. And try this for size. When I got to that address you gave me, I found a fresh corpse there with a bullet hole in it.
A murder?
Yeah, and your routine was pat, brother, so before homicide starts combing out the snags in your story, you better untangle it yourself right now. You lied to me. Now, why'd you do it, Whitaker? Why the double tone?
All right, Marlowe, I'll tell you. I'll tell you this! Oh!
He was as quick as a wounded cat. The riding crop slashed across my face even before I'd realized he'd moved. And by the time the red light stopped dancing in my eyes, Marvin Whitaker was gone. I turned as the head waiter walked up to me. He studied the hot red welt rising on my face for a moment and then murmured discreetly that if my name was Marlowe, I was wanted on the phone. It was Lieutenant Ibarra.
Marlowe, you can stop beating the brush for Julia Perry. We found her.
You did? Where is she, Ibarra?
She's out in the alley here, behind the Beechwood Plaza Hotel, Marlowe. Exactly 8 floors down from the window of her room. She fell through the glass roof above the rear entrance.
Oh.
It's not pretty.
Oh.
She explained the whole thing, including that Ruby guy's murder in a note we found in her room.
I'll be right over, Ibarra.
Okay, don't hurry. whole story, Marlowe. When Drum finally got around to trusting her, he practically gave her his business. It was too much temptation.
Mm-hmm.
She'd been stealing from him in a big way for almost a year, her note says.
And she decided to run for it when she knew she couldn't hide the thefts any longer, huh?
That's right. That Ruby caught on some way, and she killed him, but I guess murder was too rich for her blood, so she came back here, thought it over, and then checked out.
Yeah. All she left behind was a little plaid raincoat and a purse over there. Hey, she was wearing a dinky hat, too, Ibarra. Did you find that?
Mm-hmm. Come over here to the window, Phil. See down there in that canopy, that little black circle? That's her hat. I sent Mooney down to get it. Can't leave any loose ends around, you know.
Yeah. Got a light, Lieutenant?
Oh, sure. Here you are.
Thanks.
Hey, what happened to you? That welt on your face, Phil.
Oh, I backed that horsey liar named Whitaker into a corner, and he slapped his way out with a riding crop. And speaking of loose ends, if I ever catch up with that... Ibarra, where did that stuff on the dresser come from?
Well, this out of the pockets of Julia's plaid coat. Why?
But that's impossible unless... Holy smoke. That's why Whitaker lied to me.
Hey, where are you going with that, Phil? Come back here.
I gotta check on something, Ibarra, and keep your notebook handy. If I'm right, this deal is still wide open.
From January 15th, 1949, The Adventures of Philip Marlowe. The conclusion follows these important messages. You're listening to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station. You're in tune with Classic Radio Theater right here on your favorite station. Now the conclusion of The Adventures of Philip Marlowe, starring Gerald Mohr, January 15th, 1949.
All the way from the suicide's room in the Beechwood Plaza out to the widow's villa in the Sunset Terrace, my mind juggled a jumble of facts, trying to beat them into a brand new pattern. A pattern that had to include an object Ibarra had found in the pocket of that plaid raincoat. It almost made sense, but I needed just a little more. Well, when I turned into the parking lot at the Sunset Terrace, rain began to fall again. Thin, cold rain. I walked to Eve Bentley's door and pressed the bell. Just as I expected, it was Marvin Whitaker, unsmiling and nervous, who answered the door. I didn't give him a chance to think. I just swung hard. Okay, horseman, that squares us up. Come on, Heavy, roll over. Let's see if you're carrying a gun. Okay, no gun. Now, be a good boy, Whitaker, and you'll make out all right, but one funny wiggle out of you and I'll crack your skull. It's a promise. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I heard you.
All right. Now, where's Eve? Is she here?
Find out for yourself, Marlowe. I'm through.
Fair enough. Just so I'm not talking through my head, I'll take a look in the closet first.
She won't be in there, I guarantee.
No, but a future may be. Now, let's see. It's got to be in here someplace. Oh, yeah. This is probably it. Brown cloth coat, as chic as a pair of hobnailed boots, and still damp. And the label says the BH Company, Haven, Kansas. That does it. I've got it all now, and my chivalry just died. Where is she, Whitaker? Where's Eve?
Right here, Marlowe. Uh-oh, don't try that. I guess you really do have it figured out, haven't you?
Yes, Eve, I have. Sorry it turned out this way, because you had your points as Eve and as Julia.
Don't put it in the past tense, Marlowe. As Eve Bentley, my life is just beginning, and now I've got everything I ever wanted as Julia Perry.
Then you're Julia Perry.
I was, Marvin.
She still is, Whitaker. At least that's what the bailiff will call it in court.
There won't be any court, Marlowe.
Oh, I'm afraid there will, baby. You're twice a killer now, and both for the same reason, remember? First Ruby, because he saw you as Eve. And the girl you pushed out of the hotel window, who was no doubt Anne, your old chum from the hometown. She must have seen you posing as Eve, too.
All right, Marlowe. Anne ran into me by accident and ruined everything. I had no choice. I promised her money and then told her to go to my room at the Beechwood Plaza and wait for me.
Eve, I can't believe this. It can't be true.
Yes, Marvin, it is true. Darling, I didn't want this mess. I'd have left town this morning as I intended if sweet, sly little Anne hadn't seen me. I tried to get rid of you the easy way, Marlowe. When I sent you to Marvin, the Selma Street address he gave you should have led you to the end of Julia Perry.
Is that why you phoned me and told me to lie to Marlowe?
Yes, Marvin. I was going there to write my suicide note and use the stockroom for my disappearing act. But Ruby caught me, and after that I had to work fast. But it's all right now. It all worked out perfectly. They were the only two who knew besides you, Marlowe.
Aren't you forgetting little Marvin here?
Forgetting him? Oh, no, Mr. Marlowe. Marvin's the one person I can count on.
That's what you think. You don't get me mixed up in this.
Marvin.
I bargained for an heiress, not a murderess.
Why, you dirty load. All right, then. I'll use this gun on you, too, because I'm getting out of here and no one's going to stop me.
But you're right between us, Eve. You can't get us both.
He's right, baby. You're not good enough to get us both, and killing just one of us isn't going to solve anything. What do you say? It's been a long night, baby. You just couldn't tell when you were late.
You want any more of this coffee, Marlowe?
No, it's sludge, Lieutenant. I wonder what Julia Perry uses for a heart.
You know, she planned the thing for 6 months when she first set herself up as Eve Bentley.
Mm.
And it probably would have...
Want to check now?
Oh, yes.
Probably would have worked if everything hadn't closed in on her.
Yeah, her friend Ann from Kansas, Ruby the leg man.
And you with that torn book of matches. Incidentally, that was pretty fast figuring up in the hotel room there, Marlowe.
Oh, not so fast, Ibarra. I knew Eve had those matches because I left them with her. So when you found the same matches in the pocket of Julia's plaid coat, it figured. Julia almost had to be Eve.
And that left Ann to furnish the body for the suicide.
Yeah. You know, I wasn't so sure about that until I found the brown coat with the Haven, Kansas label in Eve's apartment.
Yeah. Well, I'd better wait on back to the office, Phil. Look at that rain come down. Think it'll ever stop?
I don't know. I doubt it.
Oh, by the way, here, it's her hat. Mooney finally got it down off that hotel canopy. Maybe you'd like it for a souvenir.
Yeah.
The military people call it a halo hat. Good night, Marlowe.
I sat there a while after Ibarra left, looking at the rain in the street, and the cold coffee in front of me, and Julia's little round halo on the table. And finally I got up and went outside. Dirty water scudded along the gutter and gurgled thickly into the sewer drain at the corner. For a minute, I caught a glimpse again of the girl I'd figured Julia Perry to be when I went through her cottage in Santa Barbara. Yeah, that girl was an angel. When I finally caught up with her, her halo turned out to be black, jet black, inside and out. I dropped the little hat into the gutter and watched it go as far as the drain at the corner. And then I went home.
The Adventures of Philip Marlowe, created by Raymond Chandler, stars Gerald Mohr, and is produced and directed by Norman MacDonald. Script is by Mel Donnelly, Robert Mitchell, and Gene Levitt. Featured in the cast were Joan Banks, Paul Frees, Peter Leeds, Jack Crucian, and Lois Corbett. Lieutenant Detective Ibarra is played by Jeff Corey. The special music was by Richard O'Runt.
January 15th, 1949, The Adventures of Philip Marlowe on Classic Radio Theater. Now on Classic Radio Theater, an episode of the soap opera Claudia from January 15th, 1948.
And now, Claudia.
You certainly dawdle over your breakfast. What are we waiting for? Aren't you ever going to give me some sugar?
What for?
I might want to put some in my coffee, and I might want to put some on a bird's tail.
That is salt.
Salt's just a city child's idea. Birds really like sugar.
On their tails?
Where else? Birds don't drink coffee.
How do you know?
The little bird told me.
I bet he didn't tell you the truth. I bet birds drink all kinds of coffee.
Your coffee, maybe.
I bet if we lived in the country, the birds would drink so much coffee there wouldn't be any left for us.
Birds don't drink coffee, I tell you. It keeps them awake.
Birds like to stay awake. They stay awake all night and sing and keep people from sleeping.
Birds sleep at night just like anyone else.
How do you know? Did you ever see one?
Well, everybody knows that. You don't have to see one.
I bet when we go to the country today, we won't see a single bird sleeping.
We won't see a single bird, period.
Aren't there any birds in Connecticut?
Not in January. They all go south.
Where exactly do they go?
Oh, south.
You said that, but where south?
Well, that all depends on the bird.
You don't know.
No, I don't know.
But all I can say is if the birds don't stay in Connecticut all winter long, I don't see why we should. Are birds so much better than us?
So much worse. They don't have a house like the one we're going to look at today, if you hurry.
Lots of birds have houses. Nice houses, too, and trees. David, wouldn't it be exciting to live in a tree?
It would be exciting. How would you like to live in a tree with a girl who even falls off of a stepladder? Every time I'd fly out to the office, I'd expect to come home to find you sitting under the tree with a nice big shiner.
Do birds get black eyes?
Oh, you would. There'd be a professor standing over you with a magnifying glass saying, My, what a rare species. This gentleman is the only black-eyed Claudia ever seen in Connecticut.
David.
Now, come on, finish your breakfast and quit stalling.
Must be nice to be a bird and live in a tree with someone you're in love with. All the big green leaves around us, and nobody down below could even tell we were there. You'd be all dressed up in red and blue feathers. We'd have nothing to do all day long but be together and sing.
That'd be all very pretty, wouldn't it? If you don't stop dreaming, we'll never get to the country.
Oh, won't we?
What happens when all the leaves begin to fall off the tree?
Well, then we go into the house.
That's just where we're going today. Into the house, if you'll get a move on.
But the house isn't a tree. Or is it, David? You didn't say for sure.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, but the house I saw is not a tree.
Oh,
It
well.
has a lot more disadvantages.
I know.
How do you know? You haven't even seen it.
But I know where it is. Oh, David, I've seen lots of houses, but I've never seen one that could make as much difference as this one.
You just wait until you see it.
How long does it take to drive up?
A little over an hour.
That isn't bad, is it, David?
You wouldn't think that so near to New York you could find a place that would be such real country.
Oh. David, is it a very beautiful house?
I'm not going to say another word till you see it. I want you to see the house and have the house talk for itself.
You make it sound as if we're leaving right away.
Well, as soon as I get back from the garage with the car. Are you ready?
I am. But what about Bluff?
We're taking him along. And if he knew we were going to the country, he'd be chewing your arm off for keeping him waiting.
And Shakespeare.
We're leaving Shakespeare with Mother, don't you remember? We arranged that last night.
I did, but I thought maybe you didn't. You going to get the car right now?
That I am.
You can't. You promised me last night that today you'd tell me what a mortgage is.
I'll tell you on the way to Connecticut.
David, that's mean. On the way to Connecticut, you're going to tell me all about the house, and I'm never going to know about the mortgage.
Mortgages are the one thing the less you know about, the better. Goodbye. I'll be back with the car right away.
David! Goodbye.
Say, darling, the garage isn't in Siberia.
Oh, David. I was just thinking how sad it would be if we weren't coming back here.
Darling, please, wait till you see the house. Maybe you won't want to come back.
David, you like it so much, and I'm being terrible, but I...
Oh, you're so terrible that I am driven to kiss you. There.
I miss you. Hurry back. Where are you, Shakespeare? I've got to give you your breakfast before we take you to Mama's. Here, Shakespeare, 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 Shakespeare. Oh, there you are, darning David's socks again. Now, you come in the kitchen and drink your milk while I do the dishes. Honestly, Shakespeare, why are cats so independent? You drink your milk now. We don't want Mama to think we're not feeding you, do we? David, he's back, Shakespeare. We're not going. I'm coming. Just wait till I dry off my hands.
Good morning, Mrs. Norton.
Why, Fritz, it's you.
Yeah, Mrs. Norton, it's Fritz.
Well, come in, Fritz. My, you're up early.
Ah, Mrs. Norton, 9 o'clock is not early. 6 o'clock for me. That is early.
6 o'clock? It's terrible to think that anybody has to get up at 6 o'clock.
When I was a boy, we lived on a farm. We get up at 4 o'clock.
On a farm, people get up at 4 o'clock?
Yeah, Mrs. Norton. The cows, they are up, so the people, they must get up too.
But 4 o'clock? I wish Mr. Norton were here to hear that.
Yeah, so, Mrs. Norton. You have trouble with the radiator?
Radiator? Oh, no, it's very hot.
Does it make many noises, Mrs. Norton? The other tenants, they complain the radiators makes lots of noises in the morning. Wakes people up.
We never wake up.
So, that's nice. Well, if it don't bother you, Mrs. Norton, I take a look at the radiators. It's not good they make noises.
Oh, no, they don't bother me at all. Say, Fritz, do you mind if I tell Mr. Norton what you said about people on farms getting up at 4 o'clock?
Why should I mind?
Well, Mr. Norton wants us to live on a farm. But if he hears that, maybe he'll change his mind.
Live on a farm, but that is wonderful, Mrs. Norton. He should not change his mind.
But I thought you said...
Oh, on the other side, farms, they are one thing, but here in America, they are another. You should see the farm Lisa and Edward they live on. Oh, in Bavaria, they would call it a palace. A baron would live in it.
But what about getting up in the morning? I know we wouldn't like that.
Mrs. Norton, that is for peasants, like in Europe. Here in America, it all goes by machinery. Machinery to milk the cows, machinery to bring in the hay, machinery for plowing, everywhere machinery.
But I don't think this is the kind of farm Mr. Norton is taking me to.
No? Well, you've seen it, Mrs. Norton?
Oh, no, we haven't seen it. Not yet. We're going to see it this morning. Together.
Well, Mrs. Norton, you wait and see it. I know Mr. Norton. He is an American. Well, I do not say, Mrs. Norton, that machinery is better. Where is the machinery to bring down the rain from the heavens when you need it, or make the sun shine? But every other machine that Mr. Norton will have.
I'd like to see that.
And you will see it, Mrs. Norton. And you will like living there also.
But I like living here, Fritz. So please don't shoo us away. It's David. Don't bang the door down. I'll be there in a second. And I'm almost ready. David! Oh, it's you, Mama.
I'm your mother, too. I thought I was only the cat sitter.
We were going to bring the cat over to you, Mama.
You can't expect me to sit home all morning waiting for a cat to come calling. Well, I've got other things to do. Hello, Fritz.
Good morning, Mrs. Brown. Well, I'm just going.
Fritz and I were just talking about farms, Mama. Fritz lived on a farm.
Did you, Fritz?
Oh, but that was in Europe. Here, farms, they are different.
Fritz thinks a farm is a wonderful place to live. And he's sure that the one David likes will have all kinds of machinery on it and things.
Well, from what David said last night, I'm not sure that I...
Oh, and Julia called, and when I told her about it, she said there's some very beautiful farms around Eastbrook.
I never think of Julia as exactly a milkmaid. How does she know?
Oh, Nancy Riddle, who's a good friend of hers, lives up near there. Julia says she has a wonderful place.
I don't doubt it. The Riddles always do.
I bet that's just what David's farm is like. Great big place with a long drive going up to it with trees on both sides.
David didn't say anything about a long drive last night.
Oh, you know David, Mama. He's trying to surprise me. Just like bluff.
David didn't sound to me as though he were doing any teasing. He sounded far too excited.
Oh, Mama, now don't be silly. I know just what the house is going to look like. It has white fences all around it. I've always loved those white fences.
The fact that you love them is hardly a proof that they're going to be all around your house.
David loves them, too.
How do you know that?
He must, because I do.
If he knows you do, Mrs. Norton, of course he does. Now, if you excuse me, I go downstairs to see about the radiator there.
Oh, Fritz, you mustn't go yet. You've got to tell Mom all about the machinery.
What machinery?
Well, the machinery on the farm, of course. There are machines for milking and plowing and bringing down rain and waking the cows up and all sorts of things.
But Fritz hasn't been there.
Of course he hasn't been there, but he knows all about the machinery on farms.
No, I do not know about it, Mrs. Norton. I mean, I was an old-fashioned farmer. I believe in the machines that God made, my hands. But for the young people, well, it's not the same.
I don't think it's going to be like living on a farm at all.
If Fritz is right about all the wheels going around, it's going to be like living inside a watch.
And it has window boxes with ivy. Don't you like ivy against a white wall? And a fine big door with a white porch thing over it. Don't you remember David talking about the door?
I remember him talking about the door. I also remember a movie called Gone with the Wind, which you and I saw together.
You mean to think that farm is going to look like Tara?
I mean that you think it is.
I know it is.
But that was the South, Claudia, and this is Connecticut. That was a mansion, and this is a salt box.
What's wrong with salt boxes? Don't you remember David saying there was a valid appellation for a... You remember what he said?
I remember. Better than you do.
Besides, David likes it.
I know he does, and it won't be polite if you're too disappointed.
How can I possibly be disappointed when I know what it's like? Oh, Mama, I'm just busting with curiosity to see it right now.
Not a soul could guess from seeing your face.
But, Mama, what'll I do when I see it? I don't want to leave here.
Well, you are leaving here in about 2 minutes, and you better not keep David waiting.
Just say I won't. I'm going to put my coat on right now. I'm going to wear the tweed one for the country.
You better wear the beaver one for the cold. And don't put it on yet. You'll only get overheated.
David will be here any minute.
Well, Mrs. Norton, I think I go now, and I hope you like the farm.
I'm going to love it, I think. That is David. I wonder what's been keeping him. David?
Hello. Hello, Mother. Hello, Fritz.
Hello.
Hello, it's a convention.
David, you've been such a long time. I've been dying of impatience.
You have, eh? When I left, you could hardly drag yourself away from the table. What's happened?
Fritz and Julia and Mama have been telling me what the farm is going to be like. And David, I can hardly wait to see it.
Well, come on, darling, because neither can I.
This broadcast of Claudia was supervised and directed by William Brown Maloney.
Catherine Bard starring as Claudia, and her husband being portrayed by Paul Crabtree. Claudia, January 15th, 1948, and it was here on Classic Radio Theater. Thank you for making us a part of your day. Please thank this radio station and support their advertisers. It is their kindness and courtesy that allows us to be with you each and every time we're here on your favorite radio station. Very, very important. Thank you so much. Also, would you also do me a favor and visit my webpage, classicradio.stream. There you can follow us on social media. All the social media links are there at classicradio.stream. You can also learn more about building a classic radio collection of your own, and you can find our shows on demand, and you can contact me there, classicradio.stream. Our podcasts are available anywhere podcasts are served, so if you miss a day, you don't have to miss a show. Just search for Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. And tell all your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater on your favorite radio station.